So once again, we're talking about Moose when it comes to Impact Wrestling, and yesterday we did a video talking that Moose was expected to re-sign with Impact. Of course, we know that his contract does expire in June, and he has been very open that his contract expires in soon. He recently said on Twitter that one of his aims, was to win the Unified Impact World Championship before his contract expires in June. There's been lots of speculation about his future. Is he headed to WWE? Is he headed to AEW? Is he going to re-sign with Impact Wrestling? What is going on? There hadn't been a ton of information about it. There'd just been speculation as to, we'll find out sooner rather than later because June isn't that far away. And then yesterday, a report came out from the Wrestling Observer newsletter and Dave Meltzer saying that Moose was expected to re-sign with Impact Wrestling and that he may have even already signed a new deal with Impact or was very, very close to. Either way, Moose was expected to re-sign with the company. There was thought process that Moose would be facing Kenny Omega at Slammiversary. He is scheduled to face Kenny Omega for the Unified Impact World Championship at Against All Odds in June. That might have been already taped since Impact Wrestling recently did a 4-day television taping and they taped a whole bunch of content for June, including the Against All Odds event on Impact Plus. But it maybe doesn't look that simple anymore because Moose himself has taken to social media to dismiss a new report on his Impact Wrestling contractual status. Now, as I mentioned, the latest issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter said that Moose was close to signing a new Impact contract or had already agreed and signed a new deal. F4W Online then reported this on Friday evening that Moose has re-signed with the company, but Moose took to Twitter on Friday night and shot down the report. He said, quote, "Not true," in response to the report. You can see the tweet on the screen there at the right-hand side of me. He added in a follow-up tweet, quote, "Please get your news from me and me only." Now, as I just mentioned, Moose recently revealed that his Impact Wrestling contract expires in June. It was noted previously that Moose had fueled rumors and speculation on a possible run in NXT and teased that he will destroy the AEW Double or Nothing triple threat main event between Pac, Orange Cassidy, and Kenny Omega, who of course holds the AEW World Championship, the Unified Impact World Championship, and the AAA Mega Championship. Now, as of right now, Moose is set to challenge Kenny Omega for that Unified Impact World Championship at Impact's Against All Odds event on June 12, but there's no word on if there are any plans for him to appear on AEW Dynamite to confront Omega, but the two stars did have words this week on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. So this is it's an interesting development, absolutely. Does it necessarily mean that Moose is telling the truth? I don't know. I think you have to look very closely at what is being said here. Now, that initial tweet there you can see on the screen says Moose signs new contract with Impact Wrestling. Now, he is saying not true. Now, what is he saying that's not true? He's saying it's not true that he hasn't signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling. That may be true, and I think Moose might be telling the truth. I think what you have to look at in this situation is what was the Wrestling Observer, what was F4W, what was Dave Meltzer saying in that article. He said in that article, the main points in that article was that Moose is expected to stay with Impact. In addition to Moose being expected to stay with Impact, he may have already signed a new deal or was very close to. So Moose is coming out saying, well, I haven't signed a new deal. That doesn't refute the entirety of the remainder of the report, does it? And I think some people might be getting concerned about this because yesterday, I mean, there were quite a few Impact Wrestling fans that watched this channel, and I really do appreciate it. I love covering all the Impact Wrestling news. I don't think enough people do, frankly. And when I did the video yesterday and we spoke about Moose re-signing, what it could mean for him going forward, what a big deal it was for Impact Wrestling to get someone like Moose to stay with the company, even if he hadn't re-signed. It was a big deal. It was a big get, especially after they had just re-signed Jordan Grace to a new contract as well. All of that was really impressive by Impact Wrestling, and it was a big deal for Impact that they managed to pull that off. And I don't think that's necessarily changed here. Moose, again, is refuting that he hasn't signed a new contract. Okay. He's saying that that's not true. Is he refuting the entirety of the report, that he's not expected to stay with the company? Is he refuting that he's not close to signing a contract? I don't know. I think he's refuting to the headline there. The headline is that Moose signs a new contract with Impact Wrestling. He's saying that's not true. Okay, that might not be true. But is he still expected to stay with Impact? Is he still close to signing a new contract? Time will tell. Time will tell with that one. Meltzer, when it comes to his his sources in Impact. Historically, Mouse's sources in Impact haven't been exactly, completely close to the mark. I think in recent weeks and months, people like Sean Ross Sapp, in my opinion, have been far closer and far more accurate in breaking news when it comes to Impact Wrestling stories. Of course, Fightful haven't come out and said anything about this. PW Insider are another company that do have very close ties to Impact Wrestling. When they report stuff about Impact, chances are it's usually true. So if either Fightful or PW Insider reported this, I would say, well, that is a good indication that this might be accurate. But time will tell. Time will tell. We also have to realize that we're living in the world of professional wrestling here, aren't we? And that in the world of professional wrestling, maybe because of the storyline that is planned, and we'll touch on this in a second, because of the storyline that is planned, it doesn't benefit Moose to come out and confirm that he has signed with Impact Wrestling, or he is going to, or he's expected to stay. As I mentioned before, I don't know if this is accurate. I don't know if this is the direction that they're going to go in. This is just something that I predicted previously, that I could see a situation whereby they do Kenny Omega versus Moose at Against All Odds, and obviously that it's Moose's contract is expiring, and they have referenced this because Moose tweeted this, of course. So I kind of put this into law in terms of the Impact Wrestling landscape that his contract is expiring in June. I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if the storyline going forward on Impact Wrestling television is something where Kenny Omega versus Moose becomes a title versus career match at Impact Wrestling, and he says that, oh, you said that you wanted to win the Impact World Championship before your contract expires with Impact Wrestling. Well, I'm telling you right now that Against All Odds, it's not only going to be for the Impact World Championship, but it's also going to be for your Impact Wrestling contract, because if you don't beat me, because you're representing Impact Wrestling, remember. You're representing the company. You're trying to win back the World Championship for the pride of Impact Wrestling. You're trying to bring the World Championship home from a guy that's in AEW, from an outside force. If you don't beat me for the Impact World Championship at Against All Odds, not only do you not win the Impact World Championship, but you're gone. You're gone from Impact Wrestling. It's championship versus career at Against All Odds. And maybe that's the storyline they try and do. Now, in reality, Moose is close to signing with Impact, or he's expected to stay, or maybe he even has re-signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling, and maybe they just play it up as Moose then becomes the outsiding invading force himself. Those stories are always fun, aren't they? When someone's been fired, but someone like Moose keeps showing up, he jumps the guardrail and attacks Kenny Omega, or he attacks Kenny Omega on AEW Dynamite, or maybe he does make an appearance for New Japan at a New Japan Global taping, or New Japan Strong taping, or he maybe even appears on, I don't know, a Ring of Honor or something like that. Maybe Moose appears on an outside brand, and it makes people think legitimately, oh man, he's left Impact Wrestling. He is a free agent. And then it all leads to Moose facing Kenny Omega once again at Slammiversary for the Unified Impact World Championship. This time, it's not just title versus career. It's a case of, if you don't beat me, you have to retire. Go back to the NFL. You failed in the NFL, and you're going to fail in the world of pro wrestling. If you can't beat me at Slammiversary for the Impact World Championship, not only can you not wrestle in Impact Wrestling, but you can never wrestle again. And Moose puts everything on the line. Then eventually he does beat Kenny Omega at Slammiversary, becomes the Impact World Champion, and also signs a new deal with Impact Wrestling on the spot. And then it kind of ties in all of this news that the Wrestling Observer was reporting here, that Moose is expected to stay and has signed a new contract. So there's lots of different ways to look into this one, isn't there? There's a lot of different ways to look into this one. Obviously, you can take Moose at face value here and agree that he hasn't signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling, and maybe he hasn't. But the report didn't say necessarily that he had. It said that he maybe had, or that he was very close to, but overall he was expected to stay. And Moose can say, please get your news from me and me only, but we live in the world of pro wrestling. The pro wrestlers are sometimes just as deceitful and dishonest as the journalists that work in the industry as well. So I think Moose coming out and denying it, I think is, for some people, might be a little bit concerning, because they'll be like, I was thinking that Moose was going to stay, and there was this thought process that Moose was going to stay, and does this mean he isn't going to stay? Does this mean he is going to go to AEW, or he's going to go to NXT? Moose knows exactly what he's doing right now. He's teasing that he was going to go to NXT, or he's teasing on social media that he's going to attack Kenny Omega or Orange Cassidy or Pac in the conclusion of Double or Nothing, that triple threat match. He's teasing that, and with this story coming out from the Wrestling Observer that he is expected to stay in Impact Wrestling, or he signed a new deal, or is expected to sign a new deal, that kind of just ruins the illusion, doesn't it, of what he's trying to do on social media. The Moose and maybe Impact have planned a very strategic game here where they're laying the foundations for probably a bigger storyline, saying that he wants to win the World Championship before his contract expires, saying that he could go to NXT, saying that he could go to AEW. All that kind of stuff is to get people talking and have this confusion and this air of mystery about Moose's future in Impact. And with this story coming out going, well, no, he's going to stay. He might have even already signed a contract, or he's very close to. Don't worry, he's not going to leave Impact. They're scrambling now, Moose. They're scrambling, and Impact, they're like, we're trying to tell this story, and it's already been ruined baby before it's even got started. So it would be in Moose's and Impact's best interest that this story does get kind of muddied and say, no, you're wrong, and it's not accurate, and all that kind of stuff. And on the flip side of it, it might be wrong. And the fact that we're talking about this now, and this does feel like there's this element of doubt, and we don't know the direction that this is going in, this is exactly what Moose wanted, because yesterday there did feel an element of certainty about it, didn't there? There did feel an element of, okay, we finally know what's going on with Moose's future at this point, after weeks and weeks of discussion and confusion, and will he, won't he? Is he going to go to WWE? Is he going to go to AEW? Is he going to go somewhere else? Is he going to go back to Ring of Honor? All that kind of stuff. There felt like an element of certainty yesterday, and that's what they don't want. Impact Wrestling and Moose, they don't want that element of certainty. So I'm not totally surprised that Moose came out and denied it. Do I think that? I think that, to be honest, and I do. And again, I know that the Wrestling Observer, or Meltzer specifically, maybe doesn't have the best sources in Impact, but I tend to think that he wouldn't go out and say that Moose had re-signed with the company, or was very close to, or was expected to stay, if someone hadn't said that to him. Someone within Impact Wrestling has obviously said to Dave Meltzer, the expectation is that Moose is going to stay. And with that, he ran the story. So I still think that the expectation now is that he will stay. I know some people will say, well, that's ironic because you thought he was going to leave previously. That's very true. Before this, before any news came out about Moose possibly staying, or Moose signing a new contract, or the expectation of Moose staying in Impact Wrestling, I did think that Moose would leave to go to WWE or AEW. Why? Because there felt like there was logic there. I felt that there was logic there in that Moose would go to WWE or AEW. Why? Because everything made sense. Moose, over the course of the last 12 months or so, has improved just exponentially in every single facet of being a professional wrestler. Physically, at this point, he's in the shape of his life. Moose has never been in better shape than he is in right now physically. He looks phenomenal. He looks like a superstar. He looks like a main eventer. He looks like a world champion. He is just head to toe. You look at him and go, that guy has something. He has that it factor, that intangible. You can't describe it. He looks great. His entrance, the presentation of Moose in Impact Wrestling has improved massively over the course of the last 12 months. His entrance now, where he walks out, the lights go out, the spotlight, the slow walk to the ring, again, with the physical appearance, looks better. He's, how tall is he? 6'6"? 200 and something pounds. Again, he's a monster. And then on top of that, his ability in the ring has improved exponentially as well. He passed that test at Hard to Kill in January, where he replaced one of the great technical wrestlers, Alex Shelley. He replaced him and maybe exceeded expectations. And coming out of a match that involved Kenny Omega, the Good Brothers, Rich Swann, and Chris Sabin, coming out of that match, people were talking about Moose, when realistically they probably should have been talking about Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega came out prior to that match wearing a Bullet Club t-shirt, a Halloween Bullet Club t-shirt, and Gallows and Anderson had Bullet Club on their gear, and people were talking about that. But to be honest, coming out of that match, people were talking about Moose. Why? Because he impressed everyone. He didn't look out of place. In fact, he shone. He's hitting Spanish flies. He's hitting splashes. He's hitting all these kind of unbelievable moves. And suddenly there was this discussion of, man, this guy is, something's clicking with Moose. And maybe it's taken a while for him. You know, he's been around for a while. And he had a bit of a difficult transition over from the NFL. He was in Ring of Honor. And when he came over to Impact, I don't think physically he was in the best shape he could have been. I think he would admit that. I think there were issues in terms of finding the gimmick, finding the character. You have to realize, I suppose, as well, coming over from the NFL, it's taking him a while to find that maturity process and in what is the character that I'm trying to be. Trying to get those wrestling instincts that come in that sometimes take 5 or 10 years within the industry to get there. And maybe Moose is getting to that point now. maybe everything is starting to click when it comes to Moose and Impact Wrestling at this point. It certainly feels like it. Now, because of all of that, I thought there is no way that when this guy's contract expires in June, there is no way that WWE won't be at least having a conversation with Moose saying, look, are you interested? Do you want to come in? All this kind of stuff. Why? Because he's everything WWE looks for. And I know I mentioned yesterday, and I know people like to bring it up when I talk about Moose possibly going to WWE and stuff like that. I know that this guy does have stuff in his past that maybe does contradict WWE's hiring policies. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. WWE doesn't care about negative PR. They care about money. If they think that Moose can come in and make them money and the controversy is relatively low, they'll take that risk. They'll take that risk. And they'll look at someone like Moose, and I'm sure they did. They must have. Unless they were told, look, he isn't coming to WWE because he's staying with Impact Wrestling. He's going to sign a new deal. He's just negotiating. I would be stunned, absolutely stunned, if they didn't reach out to Moose and say, this guy's got an NFL background. They love that legitimate sporting background. It makes WWE feel a lot better about themselves for being in the world of pro wrestling. So he's got that legitimate NFL sporting background. He's got a great look. He's got, obviously, the charisma, that it factor. His promos have improved, and in the ring, he's improving as well. He ticks all of the boxes. It feels like a natural recruitment grab for WWE, and I would be stunned if they didn't reach out to Moose at some point, even prior to his contract expiring. There was the report last year, I think it was, that WWE had begun reaching out to people in Impact Wrestling going, when's your contract up? Whenever it is up, give us a call, we'll talk, we're interested. And I don't know if Moose was one of those names, but considering he has people within WWE that he knows very well and he's friends with, whether that's Ricochet, Apollo Crews, etc., I wouldn't be surprised if some of those haven't gone to people, maybe not within the higher rankings of WWE. I don't know if they've got that kind of clout, but certainly in NXT, people like Apollo Crews and Ricochet would know people in NXT, whether it's William Regal, who's a recruitment scout, whether it is Triple H or whether it's whoever, drop him a message saying, you got to get Moose. This guy, this is the guy. You've got to speak to this guy, whether it's Matt Bloom at the Performance Center. They'll have connections with these people. So again, I would be stunned if WWE hadn't at least spoken to him. And the same goes for AEW as well. In that AEW, whilst a lot of stars going from Impact to AEW, a lot of the time I say I'm not sure if that's the best place for you. The only reason I say that a lot is because it's such a crowded roster and it's difficult to get on that prime real estate of 2 hours on Dynamite on Wednesday night every single week. And I know people will say, well, they got Dark and they've got Dark Elevation. You want to be on Dynamite. That's the show that's on cable. The other two shows are on YouTube. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But certainly the bigger names in Impact would be hoping they're going to go to a place where they're going to be featured more, not to a place where they're going to be on YouTube most weeks. It's, you know, they would want to be going somewhere where they're going to be featured, and that roster is very bloated in AEW, and the real estate is 2 hours on a Wednesday. Now, will that change with Rampage coming on the Friday, that extra hour? Maybe slots will start to open up, I don't know. Chances are if you go to AEW, you're going to be put in a faction and you've got to be working as part of an ensemble as opposed to working as a single star. Maybe that doesn't fit what Moose wants to do. Either way, for me now, and again, previously I would have said I think he's going to go to WWE or AEW because I think the money, the exposure, and the right timing in his career. He's been with Impact 5 years. There's not a lot left for him to do. Yes, win the World Championship, but is that going to happen? Maybe it's just a timing thing, but I think now I've kind of done a bit of a 180 on it because of this Wrestling Observer report, and that feeling is just because I find it really difficult to believe that someone within Impact hasn't spoken to Dave Meltzer. I find it really difficult to think that someone hasn't just said, look, the expectation is he's going to stay. We're not even concerned. Because Meltzer would have reached out about it. People would have reached out about it. And he would have said, no, I think the expectation is that he's going to stay. And I think the only reason now that Moose is refuting these reports is probably just mainly because the thought process is we're going to use this as an angle. Or I want to keep people guessing. I want to have people's interest up. If the news comes out and it's confirmed by Impact that Moose is re-signed with the company, does that make the Kenny Omega Moose feud a little bit less desirable to see? Not really, but it depends on the storyline. Because if they've just taped 4 weeks worth of television where Moose and Kenny Omega is going to become a title versus career match, and then the next thing you know, it comes out that Moose has signed a contract with Impact Wrestling, kind of kills the gimmick a little bit, doesn't it? So all of that's very interesting. I don't know, like I said, I think Moose is denying the headline there, that he signed a new deal with Impact. The report does state that the expectation is that he will stay, or at the very least, he's very close to re-signing. So we'll have to wait and see. And maybe Moose, like he says, please get your news from me and me only. Maybe Moose will confirm it in the future. Who knows? As always, guys, though, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Moose denying reports that he has signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.